Life can be stressful. From everyday struggles to past trauma, many of us carry invisible weights. But here's the good news. Small, everyday actions can make a big impact. So we hit the streets to ask people, what's one small thing you do to feel calmer or handle stress?
Something I like to do after a long, stressful day is go home and play games with my friends online.
Well, usually when I'm stressed out, I like to listen to music to help calm me down.
I really like to read and then go to a local coffee shop.
So for reducing stress, one thing that I like to do is smudging because I find that it's very
I
grounding.
really like to take the dogs for a walk down the bush road. It really calms me down, get some fresh air, and they seem to love it.
If I'm stuck at the office all day, try to do chair yoga, try to do stretching, those kinds of things. And so far in my 61 years, it's working.
So to understand why small changes help, we first have to understand what trauma is. So Dr. Gabor Mate, an expert on trauma, explains that there's two types of trauma. The first is capital T trauma. These are things that are the more severe things that should never happen to a person, the things we typically associate with the word trauma. So things like interpersonal violence and natural disasters. The other type is small t traumas, and these are more mundane experiences of stress and adversity that impact our emotional and social well-being. So things like childhood bullying and romantic breakups. Dr. Mate also explains that trauma is not what happens to you, but what happens inside you as a result. So trauma causes emotional dysregulation, which makes it harder to understand, manage, and respond to emotions in a way that fits the situation. So this dysregulation can then lead to feeling overwhelmed, difficulty calming down, and reactions that may unintentionally worsen challenges, ultimately affecting coping and well-being. Okay, so to understand how trauma causes emotional dysregulation and how to address it, let's use Dr. Dan Siegel's hand model of the brain. So imagine this fist here is your brain. At the base here, we have the brainstem. This helps keep us alive. It controls automatic functions like breathing, heart rate, and digestion. Now, if you tuck in your thumb here, this represents the limbic system, more specifically the amygdala. So this is the part of the brain that processes emotions, memory, and our stress response. So covering it here is the prefrontal cortex. This is the part of our brain responsible for thinking clearly, regulating emotions, and making decisions. But under extreme stress, especially after trauma, the limbic system in here takes over. This is called flipping the lid. So our prefrontal cortex shuts down and the amygdala hijacks control, keeping us stuck in survival mode, constantly on high alert, reactive, and overwhelmed. The good news, the brain isn't fixed, it's neuroplastic, meaning it can change, heal, and adapt through new experiences. When the prefrontal cortex is offline, big overwhelming changes can feel impossible because we're not in a state to think rationally. That's why small intentional shifts, micro-resiliency, are key. These tiny actions rewire the brain gently, making healing more sustainable. So by practicing simple daily habits, we start to close the lid and shift from survival mode back to balance and control. So, how do we activate neuroplasticity and retrain the brain for resiliency? Research shows that small, consistent actions, known as micro-resiliency strategies, play a key role in this process. This concept, developed by Bonnie St. John and Alan Haynes, builds on the idea of small wins to help shift the brain from being in survival mode down into safety mode. Now, let's explore the 5 micro-resiliency frameworks. So the first strategy is to refocus your brain to strengthen cognitive function. So when we experience trauma, our prefrontal cortex here, the part of our brain responsible for problem solving and focus, can get overwhelmed. We may feel scattered, forgetful, or stuck in a loop of overthinking. But small intentional shifts can refocus our brain and help us regain control. So the first one here is to use a zone refocus moment. This is where you pause for 10 seconds, take a deep breath, and then name your top priority. The other is to use a brain dump, which involves writing down all your thoughts on a piece of paper and clearing mental clutter. So the second strategy is to reset your primitive alarm to prevent emotional hijacking. So trauma keeps our amygdala here, the brain's alarm system, on high alert, making it easy to get emotionally hijacked. So a small stressor can feel like a big threat, but micro-resiliency techniques can calm the alarm system and bring you back to balance. So you can try the labeling reset, so say what you're feeling out loud. So for example, I feel tense right now. Studies show this simple act lowers amygdala activity. The other approach is to use a physical grounding technique, so this can be shaking out your hands, pressing your feet firmly into the floor, or splashing cold water on your face. This sends a signal to your brain that it's safe to relax. The third strategy is to reframe your attitude. This shifts your perspectives and builds your positivity. So after trauma, our brains become wired for negativity, constantly scanning for problems. But a simple reframe can create new thought patterns and build emotional resiliency. One way to do this is by challenging automatic negative thoughts and shifting perspectives. Try the ABCDE reframe. When something stressful happens, pause and break it down. ABCDE stands for adversity, belief, consequence, disputation, and energization. Let's look at an example. So say you get critical feedback on a project at work. So A, adversity, you think, I messed up, my boss is disappointed in me. B, belief, you tell yourself, I'm not good enough and I'll probably fail again. C, the consequence, you feel anxious, discouraged, and unmotivated. D, disputation, could there be another way to see this? Maybe your boss is giving feedback because they believe in your potential. E, energization, a more helpful thought might be, this is a chance to grow. I can use this feedback to improve. Okay, so the fourth strategy is to refresh your body to refuel your resiliency. So stress and trauma drain our body's resources. Dehydration, poor sleep, and lack of movement all make resiliency harder. But small physical resets can restore balance. Try one of these 3 micro shifts. So first is hydration reset. So even a 1% drop in hydration reduces cognitive function. So keep a water bottle nearby and take sips throughout the day. Next, an energy check-in. So stand up, stretch, and take 5 deep breaths to reoxygenate your brain. And next is a sunlight boost. So step outside for 2 minutes to reset your body's natural energy cycle. The last micro-resiliency strategy is to renew your spirit. So the goal of this is to tap into your purpose. So after trauma, it's easy to feel disconnected from purpose and meaning, but even small reminders of what matters most can help you reconnect to your spirit. So you can try Touchstone Renew. So carry or display a small object that reminds you of something that brings you joy, comfort, or peace. You can use meaningful rituals, so start your day with a moment of gratitude or reflection. And you can also reconnect with the community, so even a short message to a friend or a loved one can boost emotional well-being.
Healing from trauma isn't about giant leaps. It's about small, consistent steps that rewire the brain. Which of these 5 frameworks will you try today?